Hey everyone, welcome to Pastor Play. So today we have Reasonable Doubt Season 1, Episode 9, titled Already Home, currently streaming on Hulu. And in this episode, I don't even know if Jax is going to make it home. All right, but let's start off with one positive about like the overall season. And that is show me, just don't tell me. They did that with how Jax and Damon met with her as the DA and Damon the defendant 16 years ago. It still to me feels like Lewis was a rebound that has lasted a long time, but I digress because decisions are made overall in this season finale. Um, might have been nice to see some of their courtship though between Jax and Lewis. Maybe in an episode, they did the same thing with Jax and stepfather Paul, whose oops I did it again actions were suspect and was allegedly drunk to justify or rationalize his behavior, which you can't. And last but not least, we see the last night of Kalisha before her death in this episode. Again, the season finale of season 1. And, what's up with just 9 episodes for a season? It's like Hulu must think that they're Disney. And then I realized, come to find out, Hulu is owned by Disney. I will say quality over quantity is better. So, does Reasonable Doubt stick to the landing on the season finale? These are my confessions. These are my confessions in a parking lot by Braden to Jax. Then later on with Sarah to Braden, people out here just, kind of telling their true intentions all of a sudden. And the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde of it all, the two-facedness of some people that we find out. But people make choices that they don't come back from, and they have to pay the piper because reality really sets in for some characters. So let's get on to the review. So we open up with 6 months later, earlier to the flashback of Brayden going to Kalisha's house. Brayden saying, I never loved anyone the way I loved you, Kalisha. Kalisha tells Brayden, he can't trust Theo, but it doesn't matter. He's not going to believe her anyway because of that night in the hotel. And she told him to stop several times and having sex, but he just kept going. And she said she just went along with it. But she tells him it's her truth and she wants to move on. Brayden does apologize. Then Kalisha asks for the NDA. She signs it, but then she says she can't have that last time between them be what that was. And then she starts taking Brayden's clothes off. And at this point, I'm a little lost because I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, okay, so that night they never showed us that night, where she said she was sexually assaulted, but the night that they fought, Braden was like, yeah, angry. Maybe he, thought they're fighting, they're gonna have like some kind of makeup sex, and Kalisha's like, hell no, ho, don't touch or look at me right now. And I get that, and Braden didn't stop. Um, but her wanting to sleep with him in this moment after accusing him of sexual assault, I didn't really get that because this is like you said he assaulted you. Now then you're just like, I just want to move on. Let's do it one more time. Give it to me one more time. I didn't really get that. Just the conviction of it, and the earlier episodes in the season where she's kind of dragging Jax for not protecting black women, and then to kind of turn around and just be like, oh well, I just want to move on. I don't know. I I don't know. I don't know. To me, that didn't really make sense. I guess as far as like the overall story with her, and then it's like, well, yeah, move on with your husband. But every married couple here, they're screwing everybody else but their damn spouses. This has got me effed up. It's like everybody is doing something with somebody else, but the people that they actually married to. And Braden leaves Kalisha, and then Theo comes and knocks on her door and barges in, picks up a wine glass, and says, "Smells like sex and regret." Theo leaves once Kalisha says she signed the NDA for Brayden. Brayden looks at the NDA later on in his car, and then on the signature part where Kalisha signed, she put the word F you. He comes back to Kalisha's house, angry, and then she's like, the only power you have over me, was in the bedroom, because without the money, the business, and her, he's just a sad, ashy N-word from DC trying to get his black card back. Of course, Brayden, he like loses it. He calls her a greedy B word. I don't know if I can curse because YouTube. And then he stabs the stem of the wine glass into her neck, and then she's just like bleeding all out on the side of her neck with the blood gushing out on the floor, slowly dying. And he just kind of leaves her there. And we finally get to see that yes, it was Brayden who killed Kalisha. I did say at one point I really did think it was Theo. And when Theo comes, they kind of have their kind of back and forth, you know, and he leaves. I'm like, okay, I guess Theo didn't do it. But then Brayden ends up coming back because she pretended to sign the NDA, and then said "F you," and then she kind of went on her, let me tear you down kind of a thing, which is fine. At this point, they both did dirt in terms of each other, to each other, cheating on their spouses, having this affair, within the company. And later on, come to find out, I don't even know. It's like, were they all stealing money or lying about certain things at a certain point? I don't even really get that anymore, because it seems like different people, like it seems like they were all lying about the funds and how much the value of the company is. But either way, you know, both of them are doing dirt, but then acting like the victim of each other's actions, and it's like, well, you're both really technically no good because you both did the same thing. So I mean, it's to me, it's more like of at the end of the day, to me, she had more of like a baneful death than just like she was the victim. I'm not gonna say that she wasn't necessarily victimized, but she was very in control of a lot of her decisions, and her decisions kind of got her where she ended up. Of course, consent. You should consent to having sex with whoever you're with, and that is wrong. But I just feel like a lot of people in this episode, they're not necessarily victims. It's the reality of the decisions that they made, and to me, that's like one of the overall themes. And so after this, we end up going present day. 6 months later, we're finally caught up to like the very first episode when they opened up with 6 months earlier. So we're finally 6 months later in present day of this episode. And Jax tells, she's in a room with her secretary, Mike, the private investigator that she uses, and Rich, the other lawyer, and saying, I'm pretty sure Brayden did it to kind of the few of her defense team, the main people of her defense team, and she ends up comparing Kalisha's signature on the NDA to Brayden's sympathy card that he sent her with his handwriting in regards to Paul dying in the last episode. And she lets Mike looks at it. She's like, yeah, Mike kind of Rich is like, well, Mike was supposed to catch that. And and Jax is like, yeah, it looks like he missed it. But either way, Mike is like, well, they're kind of deciding, does Brayden have dissociative memory about that day? Because he did it like in this moment of anger, and kind of just has lost his memory for that time, or does he know he did it and he's like a sociopath? And so that's kind of what she's deciding. And before getting into the courtroom to give her final closing statement, you know, Brayden comes in. Brayden comes and like saying basically like thank you for all you've done, and he kind of goes to like I guess give her like a fist pump or like touch her hand, and she like kind of pulls it back like don't touch me. And she's like, you really had me fooled. Why didn't you just tell me the truth about murdering Kalisha? And at this point, Braden just kind of looks at her, and then they go into the courtroom. But Jax does her job. She gives her closing statement. She defends his killing ass, and then she goes to the bathroom and she just throws up. But she gives a really good closing statement. And after she throws up, Cousin Fallon is right there outside of the door of the front stall saying, "Hard to tell lies in the court, huh?" Well, at least we know cousin Fallon didn't do it. Um, but a lot of these relationship dynamics are just all kind of a lot of these between the relationships of the couples and the family dynamics and the it's just a lot of it's just messed up. But you know, you know, Jack did what she was supposed to do. At the end of the day, she had already did her defense, so this was just her closing statements. This was just the closing statements of her and the closing statements of the defense. Of the prosecution from from the DA or whatever to kind of give their final remarks before the jury goes to deliberate and kind of give their decision of guilty or not guilty. So Jax basically kind of figured it out at the last minute. And, we go later on to Braden. He like creepily meets, he's in a parking lot in front of Jax's car and he kind of meets her and, and then he basically tells her, "Yes, I did it." And he's like, how did you figure out it was me?" Jax is like, "I knew someone like you, aka Paul, her stepfather, and they dead now." That's basically what she said. And Braden's like, "We all create narratives to survive life, and I'm so happy you took me, because I'm so happy you took my case." And basically, like no takebacks, client privilege, confidentiality, which is true. She can't, even though I thought in some cases they've updated that, but I think it's true. So even if you are the lawyer, if you're a lawyer and you have a client who is guilty by client privilege, different things like that, even with like HIPAA and the doctors, you can't disclose that information unless maybe they sign some kind of document stating that you have a spouse or whoever you give authority to either get access to information that's considered private. But either way, he tells Jax that his brother got killed, of course. No, I'm sorry. He tells Jax that, remember that story of the kid who robbed me. He did die 2 weeks later because as he was robbing me, I shot him. And he's like, "My brother got killed, of course I was strapped, my his peace be still." And Braden, apparently at this point we find out too, he was a killer even in his teens, even though it was self-defense allegedly. Even though, so the story was true that his brother had got killed um, when he was younger, and then after that he decided to carry a gun with him. But initially in the story, when Jax had him go to kind of be at that community drive charity event, he said it was because of that, because of his brother getting killed, that he didn't believe in violence and all that. And his mother got on the stand and did the whole thing about how Braden kind of took the gun away from her so she wouldn't act out in anger. Which was his mother acting too now, or did he? Maybe not. Maybe he did it for the sake of his mother because that's his mama, and he didn't want nothing to happen to her, which I can understand. Or maybe she was lying too and giving a good performance because you know because at this point Braden is kind of a manipulative liar. At this point, so who knows? Like, who knows what's the truth, not the truth? Um, But he tells Jax, don't try to stop him in the slightest bit because it won't end well for her. Even though she got other things to worry about than Brayden. Come later on in this episode, but we find out the verdict is in. And I'm pausing for dramatic effect like they did in the episode. Okay. And Brayden is found not guilty. And ironically, in real life, a lot of times these cases where they do convict, the African American guy just because they're African American, and they actually are not guilty, but they just make them guilty just because of the fact, or they give them these long lengths of time and sentence them for years in prison, like AKA Damon, Prison Bay, where they just give them these sentences or just automatically assume that they're guilty, based just on the circumstance of maybe being there. This is the one time that when they should have done guilty, they actually do not guilty. And that's ironic, but at the end of the day, Jax is a good lawyer. Even though we're going to talk about that much later at the end for like a little bit more of the review. But, I'm not going to lie, I was really hoping they would say guilty, you know, but it's just the irony of it all. The one time they should have got it right is when they get it wrong. And when they should get it wrong, or when they think they get it right, they're just wrong. So this is one of those rare exceptions where, like, okay, if the gun, don't, they say what? If the glove don't fit, you must acquit. I don't know, but anyway, we, Brayden is happy. Jax is kind of like F you, and she just kind of stands there in the courtroom while everybody leaves, kind of just feeling a certain kind of way, like this man got away with murder and she helped him, which isn't a good feeling. And you have Sarah and Brayden, they're leaving. Now they going down to the parking lot to, get into his car. And Sarah was like, congrats, Brayden. I'll be divorcing you now, taking the kids and taking half of your assets. And, basically, looks like everybody's a winner today, ho. And instead of getting in the car with him, she gets an Uber. And honestly, I don't blame Sarah, even though, at this point she's kind of publicly humiliated, because irregardless of the fact that he was, convicted as not guilty, there's still like the publicity of, this man having this affair with, one of his coworkers, and it being, national coverage. So it's embarrassing, you know. So Sarah has been calculating and she's been preparing, kind of like Wendy Williams did with her husband. She like, okay, let's see what happens. But either way, if he had went to jail, I'm assuming she still would have had access to funds and different things like that, because he may not be a billionaire yet, but he's what, he's hundreds of millions. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think Sarah was going to be fine either way. And her father owns some kind of um, billion or multi-million dollar tech company too, that we find out from earlier in the season. So either way, Sarah was going to be fine. So that's kind of the last we see of her. um, and Brayden, he fires Theo, and he kind of regains the CEO role of his company again, and then only for him and the company to come under investigation for fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. And it looks like Jack had something to do with that, because she ended up kind of mailing some documents of transactions to cousin Fallon, Kalisha's cousin. And it looks like maybe because Fallon is some kind of a lawyer too, and it looks like she maybe forwarded those documents to the FBI. So Jax didn't do it directly. He kind of did it. He did it through. It looks like he did it through cousin Fallon. So we'll see, if there's a season two, or I haven't heard any, if there's a season two, I guess we'll find out what happens to Brayden, because it looks like his story may continue into the next season. I don't know if it'll be like a main story or maybe like a guest star role, but that's kind of the end of Brayden. So now we get to Damon and Jax, and they end up meeting at the coffee shop. Jax is basically like, it's not fair It's not fair, Damon, for either of us to continue this relationship. I'm going to try to save my marriage and family. And basically, Damon just leaves and says, I'll see you later, Fairfax. And he's like, you just kind of going to give up on us. Which, let's be honest, this relationship most likely was not going to work out. Even though I think probably out of anybody, Damon had the best chance for this relationship to continue. Like, other than Lewis, I mean, if there was any kind of other obstacle, it was technically going to be Damon. But we continue on. CJ, he goes and fires Damon from the auto shop because Damon doesn't want to do the illegal side of the business anymore because it can land him back in prison, which made sense from the get go. And even though CJ's feeling some kind of way because Damon's like, I was doing that illegal stuff for the money, basically for Jax, and and CJ like, well, I thought you was doing it for me, brother. And it's like, no, he was doing it for Jax because they would go out on those because he wanted to have more money to maybe take her out and different things like that, to not feel like he was broke or less than. And CJ starts calling everybody a B word, like a parrot. Damon Jax, and basically he's like, you ain't got nobody now. You don't got her, you don't got me, you ain't got this job. Basically you're just kind of shit out of luck. With YouTube, I don't think you can curse that much because they will do those checks. So that's why I'm trying not to really curse anyway. And you guys may not even want to be hearing all that profanity, but I'll say a word here or there. But anyway, so after this, we see Jax is driving away from the courtroom after the verdict, and a car crashes into the back of her car. She kind of gets out all like dazed and kind of discombobulated, and someone ends up grabbing her from behind. Now, um, the babysitter ends up calling Lewis to come home because she can't reach Jax, and Lewis uses his phone to see that her car is kind of at a certain location on the map, and he gets there and he sees that her car has been car wrecked. He sends the kids to go to Mama Lou's while he looks for her, and he ends up calling Mike to see if Mike can help find out where Jax is. So Mike goes out and starts going to a police station to see if they could help him find out what happened to Jax and at this car wreck, because her car and her purse and phone is still in the car. And now from there, Lewis, he ends up going to see Chanel, who tells Lewis about Damon. And when Lewis gets to Damon's, like, the auto shop, Damon's like, I don't F with married women, and I haven't seen her. Lewis ends up getting a weird vibe kind of from that. He does end up giving Damon his phone number, and then he just kind of ends up leaving, but Damon still ends up staying at the auto shop. And then from there, she ends up waking up tied to a chair with rope, and then you have Damon all in all black, who's got a gun in his hand in some kind of empty garage, or kind of part of the auto shop. Actually, it's an empty garage that's like an extension of the auto shop. And then Damon's like, you helped me, gave me hope. You were the one good thing in my life. I lied to get out of prison for you, pretending like, I killed that guy. And you had me thinking a guy like me had a chance, with someone like you. And, Jack is like, we did have something special. You know me like no one else, but it was 16 years ago, which is true. Um, and she's like, things have changed though. This ain't 16 years ago. I'm not a DA. I'm married now with kids. And she's not the same woman anymore, and she's not in the same. Her circumstances have changed. Even though it would have been nice if she had thought about this before she started, having sex with him to begin with. If she wanted to go see him on the beach and have a coffee with him, She could have, but she should have just kept it. She should have kept it, non-sexual, no sex. But at this point, decisions were made. So, you know, and basically Damon's like, you never loved me, but Jax is like, I care about you a lot, but she can't leave her marriage. And again, it would have been nice if Jax had kind of did that from the beginning, because at this point, she's like, I couldn't leave my family or my husband, for your potential. And then, Damon's like, I would never do to you what you did to me. And at this point, he's like, so much for potential. And he literally just takes the gun and blows his brains out. And the cops are arriving. And so, of course, when he shoots himself in the head and dies, the cops, they go to this kind of covered up empty garage where he has her held. And basically from there, Lewis is also outside because he was waiting for Damon to get out, because he saw that Damon has been staying in the auto shop this whole time and never left. So he thought that was suspicious. And Mike is the one that had the cops go to the location of the auto shop to check it out, which was smart, because if Lewis had probably gone in there, he would have got shot himself. So, but either way, that is the end of Damon. And why does Michael Ealy keep playing all these like cuckoo, psycho, kind of crazy types of characters? I mean, to an extent, he has been typecast a lot. I mean, he does have some movies where he's like the romantic lead, but usually it's like he's the romantic lead and it's like a thriller, or, some kind of, you know, yeah, it's just kind of like he plays a lot of sometimes of the same character. At the same point, he got kids and he's married, so he got to pay his bills too. I'm not judging him, but it's just like he ends up paying a lot of the same roles. I must admit, I kind of expected it, but I was kind of hoping that maybe it wouldn't go that way, but it does. And unfortunately, it kind of is what it is. So Jax and Lewis, they end up going home together, and she basically they end up basically smoking weed, and Jax ends up telling Lewis about Paul, and how he was touching her, and how she just recently figured out what was actually really going on. And he says, how he feels, he's supportive, but he just kind of feels taken aback that she didn't feel comfortable enough to tell him. But he ends up understanding, based on what was going on. And they agreed to try couples therapy. He's not necessarily going He's not saying that he still agrees that they will get back together, but he does agree to try couples therapy finally, which he had been pushing, all up, most of the season, up until a certain person who came in episode 7. But we also have, and it kind of ends there with them more or less, as far as like, so basically they both agree to do couples therapy after this incident with Damon and them coming home. She also asked him, can he spend the night and just kind of lay in the bed, not sleep together, but just, lay in the same bed. And that's what they end up doing. And we go to Paul's funeral, which actually happens earlier in the episode, but just try to recap everything. So Paul has his funeral, and this is the first death for the kids have experienced, somebody that they know. Jax isn't feeling sad, and Lewis is kind of looking at her, not even understanding why, which he comes to find out later, why she doesn't look like she's sad, because she really doesn't know how to feel. And after the funeral was over, they don't even really show you the funeral. They just show everybody kind of in black after the fact, kind of talking, and in the backyard it looks like a Mama's Lou's, but everyone's kind of talking after the funeral. It looks like has been over, but either way, Mama Lou comes to stay with Jax, and Jax basically like Paul was grooming me, and there were multiple incidents that I didn't tell you about. I never felt safe since he came back. And she basically kind of says, she tells Mama Lou she dropped the ball, and though she's not blaming her, she just kind of wants Mama Lou to listen to her and kind of understand why she has felt the way that she's felt. And then Mama Lou was like, your dad was high with a needle in his arm with you on the couch, and he was hungover. I mean, not hungover. He was, high, kind of leaned up against the wall on the floor when I came home. And when I came home to that, I packed up his stuff and made sure that he moved in with some other person, maybe maybe a friend or something. And she basically like, I got him out of the house and away from you to keep you safe. And I hear what you're saying, but basically, today is my day to mourn, the loss of my husband. And basically, bye ho. That's what she did. She was like, right. And they never actually show them having really another conversation after that. They do show them after Jax gets kind of rescued from Damon. They do show Jax calling her mom to, I guess, check in on the kids, and Mama Lou asking, "Is everything okay?" And Jax is like, "Yeah," but she doesn't really go into detail. So that's just kind of where it ends. Mama Lou just, well, I guess she will keep on kind of going on to defend Paul, or have her thoughts about Paul, or whatever you want to call that at this point. Um, you know, she never seemed to put her grandkids in danger. She was always there when Paul, it seems, was with them if they were all together. But she's just very very kind of concrete in her feelings on Paul, and kind of excusing his behavior. Maybe if they actually have a conversation about the specific, incidents and what he was doing, maybe Mama Lou will have more clarity. But she just wants to keep defending Paul. I'm like, okay, what? Unfortunately, these things do happen, and there are, one parent or the other parent. People will be trying to defend these people's actions. I'm like, well, then you sleep with them, because I don't. That's how I look at it. I don't want to sleep with them. So, right. Why you up here defending this person's actions? But whatever. And last but not least, Jax is running. This is like at the end of the episode. Jax is doing like her kind of midday morning jog around her neighborhood, and we go to Chanel's house, where she looks kind of beat up and a little disheveled. She got like a bruise on the side of her face, and she's sitting down on the end of her stairs. And then we look over, Jamarion is on the floor. He looks like he's dead in a puddle. His head is in a puddle of blood around him. And she is calling basically Jax in the midst of Jax's run. And Jax is like, "This is not a good time right now. Can you call me back later?" And then it kind of goes silent, and Jax says, "OF," and it ends there. So it looks like maybe something happened with Chanel and Jamarion, which is another couple who seem to be sleeping with everybody else but each other. I don't know, but who also had like a toxic relationship too. So the episode basically ends there with that, with those two, with Chanel and Jamarion looking like, it looks like she may end up defending Chanel, because Jamarion's a high profile football player. So depending on how this case goes, depending on if he lives or not, I guess we're gonna find out. But they are setting up season 2. As of right now, I have not. As of right now, Reasonable Doubt has not been renewed for season 2. And earlier I said, does Reasonable Doubt stick to its landing and for the first season? I would say, yeah, actually, I think that it does stick to its landing for the first season. To me, the show was good. I think I would say it really picked up with the flashback of Jackson Damon, of her in the beginning as a DA. I would say it was good up until that point, but it really picked up after that episode. And then episode 7, where all the different couples were having sex with everybody but their actual spouses, the threesome and every different thing, it really picked up from the episode when they go back to when, Jax was a DA. But from that episode all the way through, it was like consistently good. The writing, everything. Episode 8 had like drama whiplash. I was like every minute something was going on. And in this episode it was more a little bit more pulled back because you're getting all these, these things that are coming to light. You have the scenario with Damon and Jax and how he's reacting, even though, he talked about in prison, either you're a victim or you're kind of a killer, more or less. And, he to an extent is, I guess you could kind of say, a product of maybe that kind of, prison environment, to an extent where it messed with his psyche a little bit. It seems like, he may have had some anger problems even prior to going to jail, even in that circumstance, with that, where the guy ended up getting stabbed in the neck and end up convicting him of the murder, even though it turns out it wasn't him necessarily. But it seemed like he always kind of had a little bit of an anger management problem. But it really kind of, it really escalated and kind of went to an all-time high with this whole thing with him, feel like he lost Jax, he lost his brother, he lost his job. And I guess just the mental kind of defeatedness maybe that he felt, where he just went over the rails. But then you still got Michael Ealy always playing these kind of like cuckoo for Cocoa Puff kind of characters, where you're just like, what the hell is going on? I mean, he gets typecast, but he constantly works. So I mean, some people get typecast and then you don't see him at all. Michael Ealy has consistently worked, and in the last couple of years, I've been seeing him do a lot more work. So it's like he just did it in a TV show format this time and not in a movie. So, but either way, I still liked his character. I did like the dynamic of Jax and Damon, but again, it was an unhealthy, toxic. It was a toxic relationship, because if Jax did want to be with him, she should have just had made up her mind to, divorce Lewis, and divorce Lewis and just be with Damon, and then kind of figure out what that was going to be. You can't please everybody. At the end of the day, if she really, like, look at Mama Lou, she picked Paul no matter what. So I mean, Damon didn't seem like he was a creep. He had anger management problems. Paul was a different story. So if you didn't want to be with Lewis, then fine. Don't be with Lewis. Go be with Damon and just make your decision. And, maybe the things that end up turning out wouldn't have ended up this way. Um, and, I will say that this theme of the show, too, if it's your truth or if it's not your truth, but it's mine, comes out very condescending, especially when it's coming from the men, I would say. It was very condescending when it was coming from Paul in the last episode, because it's like, this is something that you're tangibly, actively doing. Don't tell me it's just my truth. Like I'm stupid. Like, no, ho, you out here trying to, oops, I did it again, keep constantly touching me. Now, with Kalisha, again, like I said earlier, Kalisha, her and Braden both were intentionally, deliberately doing, this affair, doing this wrong thing. And it seems like between Kalisha, Theo, and Braden, like they all were lying about how much either the company was worth or where they were stealing funds. Because, it looks like it's like either all of them were a part of it in different ways, or maybe one or two of them were a part of it. Because at this point, even I don't know. It's like Theo was apparently doing it, but then maybe Kalisha was too, but then Braden was lying. Like everybody is, lying just to get by and whatnot in terms of that. But they actively engaged in an affair. Kalisha didn't like the way that it turned out for her, but she was married. Braden didn't, felt, you know, like she said, maybe he was trying to feel, maybe he did feel that being with an African American woman, even though he was married to a Caucasian woman, that maybe gave him more validation as an African American man. Like, yeah, maybe, but I mean, he turned out to be like this manipulative liar and killer. But Jax is like, okay, you said if I can't, Jack's like, okay, I'm not going to do nothing directly to you, but if I could send these documents over to Cousin Fallon, maybe she can give this to the FBI. And that looks like that's what ends up happening. If they do get renewed for season 2, I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up as a guest star in a couple episodes. But I am looking forward to a new case or maybe more than one case that lasts the whole season. But either way, because other than this Braden case, it was like literally that the case with the basketball player and the basketball player with the Instagram bot who lied about it, who tried to set him up. I mean, so there wasn't really. I mean, and other than like Damon's case, 16 years prior to when the show started. Um, so just a little bit more different with her doing different types of cases. I'd probably like to see a little bit more of that. Um, but I would say too that Jax is a good defense lawyer. She is a good defense lawyer, but I would say her judge of character is kind of flawed. And maybe it was because she never really dealt with the things that happened with Paul. But it seems once she did deal, with her kind of history with Paul and having her, kind of having more clarity and, actually dealing with it head on, she was able to kind of see through Braden's kind of crap, which was good. Um, but at first she didn't see it, and maybe because again she hadn't really fully dealt with what Paul had did to her, so that makes sense. I do like some of the connections that they make between different things. If you kind of look at it throughout over the whole season. Um, but I do believe that it stuck to its landing. And then at the end, a lot of these characters were just toxic people to an extent, but like just toxic or messy behaviors. Everyone's like very selfish. Again, a lot of these people are married, but they sleeping with everybody else but their wife. Braden with Kalisha not with a husband. Sarah going over to Kalisha's husband to make him feel good. Jamarion having threesomes. Lewis was actually good for about 6 episodes, up until episode 7 when he was with that threesome hoe who may have or may not have used the condom. I wouldn't be surprised if something comes up in season 2, maybe with that, because I just have a feeling like that she didn't use the condom. I don't know. They zoomed in on it, and then she was like, come with me and all that different stuff like that. So I feel like that may be something that they may bring back around in the second season. Um, again, Damon did make his choices, but it did seem like he got screwed over by the justice system. Um, but at the end, this show centers around Jax, and she was playing games on the side, and to either work on her marriage, and she did use Damon. She also used Night Patrol Bay Will. Um, and Damon did make it clear that he wanted something real. And then her friends had told her too, you need to make a decision and stop this. I don't know, was it Chanel or it might have been her other friend, but her friends, the ones she talked to, they told her, it is an overall tragic ending story to Damon. And I don't know how I feel about him having to kill himself. And I get the whole mental aspect of him being in prison and the psychology of seeing people die and all that stuff, and him not necessarily, even though he had anger management, he wasn't a killer like necessarily somebody like Braden. But I don't even know if Braden would survive in prison, unless he's going to be more like a kingpin Braden maybe or something. But yeah, I feel like it's a sad story as far as Damon's character. But if he had continued on with his brother doing that illegal stuff, I mean, at some point that probably would have either landed him back in prison, which maybe even if he had landed back in prison, he maybe would have killed himself then just for being back in that kind of a place. So yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, it's this was a good season finale. I do feel like the show was good overall. The writing is really good. They do have a writer's room. We got multiple people, different brains and ideas, but I do overall like the show. Again, it has not been renewed for season 2 yet. I guess we'll find out. It is streaming on Hulu. Um, and again, I really feel like the show got really good. Probably that was either episode maybe, oh, it was the episode when we go back in time to see when Damon and Jax first met. But like after that episode, I think it got really, really good. The first couple episodes were building, building the story, letting you kind of in. And even though this is a random thing, I kind of remember from the first episode, I thought she was like in her house when she was in her house tied up like in her like in a nightgown or like in like pajamas, and then in at the end, and then like for this last episode she was like tied up in all the black dress and all that from the courtroom. I would have to literally go back and look at episode 1, but I for sure thought when I saw from memory that first episode she was like tied up in her house in like pajamas, because I remember her having some kind of like eye mask thing. So I was like, I thought that was, I don't know, did they change it at the last minute? Like they shot the first episode, before they got to the last, before shooting of the last episode. But either way, let me know if I'm right or wrong on that. Comment below. Give me your thoughts. Do you like the season overall? Was there anything you want to comment on about the season? I mean, the season and this last episode. Did you like this review? How did you like it? It's way longer than I normally do, but there was a lot going on, and I also wanted to do kind of like my overall season review recap too. This is way longer than I would normally do. I try to at least do. I try not to do more than 30 minutes, but this is going to be a long review either way. So if you guys watched it, and if everyone who clicked on it watched it all the way through, thank you for that. I hope you enjoyed it. Press the like, hit the like button if you liked it. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much, but either way. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed so already. We will be doing more shows as more stuff comes out. I'll try to do more movies and different things. There's so many things out. It's hard to keep track of everything and watch everything. And I also do work and different things like that. But either way, again, like, comment, subscribe below. If you're watching this, subscribe. Thank you so much. Also get a chance to check out my other videos. Other than that, I will see you next time. Goodbye.